Welcome to Class Time, your daily classroom for CSEC and CAPE subjects. It's now time for CSEC EDPM. I am Antoinette Gray. Today we are going to be focusing on electronic communication. Our objectives today are explain what is electronic communication, identify factors to be considered in selection of communication media, identify types of electronic communication, discuss the advantages and the disadvantages of electronic communication media, and explain various features of an email. Now let's get to it. Students, I am sure you all know what electronic communication is. Yes, Thomas? Electronic communication is using electronic media to transmit information from one place to another. One type of electronic media that we all use, especially now, is the internet. Now, in order to use the internet for electronic communication, you must have a computer, a webcam, a microphone, speaker, and your internet connection. Now, some students may be without a regular desktop computer, so you may be using a laptop or a tablet or your smartphones. Now, many businesses have been using electronic communication before the coronavirus pandemic. But since the pandemic, more businesses or most businesses have been using electronic communication because many persons have been working from home. We are now looking at the traditional methods of communication that was normally used before electronic communication became popular. In businesses, we would use telephone and two-way radios, letters and memorandums, meetings and conferences, that is face-to-face meetings and conferences, notice boards, newspapers and magazines, flyers and billboards, and radio and television. All of these methods are still being used by some businesses, but not as prevalent as the ones that are used with electronic communication. Letters and memorandum, for instance, are sent via email, where persons no longer have to use the regular transmission of written information to place on file. Meetings and conferences are also happening via internet websites. So all of the methods that we have here have been transformed into the electronic medium. Electronic business communication, these are what most organizations are now using. Telephone is still a big necessity, big tool used in our organizations. We still use fax, email, teleconferencing, instant messaging, social network, Skype, text messaging, and video conferencing. All of these methods will be discussed as we move throughout the lesson. Let's now look at the advantages of electronic communication. Low cost. Low cost means because persons may not have to be traveling from their destination home to the workplace, they will not be incurring the cost of bus fares. So the low cost is associated with traveling, not having to travel, plus you may not also have to get all the equipment in the workplace because you are using your devices at home. Instant exchange and feedback. The messages being sent, sometimes they are received very quickly, and it depends on the feedback that you normally would want. So if you want the feedback now, you will choose that method that will enable you to get the feedback as quickly as possible. Information can be sent to multiple recipients at the same time. The information sent to multiple recipients. So if you want a large group or a large number of persons to get the information, you will ensure that if you're using the email especially, you can input all the email addresses that you will need at that time so that the participants can get the message in real time or at the same time. Group conversations can be organized using teleconferencing methods, and so most persons are able to get the information at the same time. Messages can be accessed at any time. You do not have to accept the message, whether it be a text message or an email message right now, if you don't have the time, but later on you may be able to get those messages. And the documents can be shared using multimedia devices. Now, if you would like to share a report or you'd like to share a presentation, you can use your projector in order to ensure that persons are able to view the information that is being sent. I hope that you have been following so far, because we are moving on now to the elements of the communication system. The basic elements of the communication system are transmitter, communication channel or medium, receiver, noise, and the output. Now we have the human voice, which is considered to be an analog signal, which is then transferred into a digital signal, which is a binary code, which is understood by the computer. In looking at what we have here on screen, we are looking at the diagram, and we are talking about the communication system, and we start with the information source. Now, the information source is the message that have to be transferred. So you are going to be using the information source as the message. The message is then inputted by the input transducer. The input transducer then converts that message into an electronic form that can be read by the computer. The transmitter will now ensure that the message that is inputted can be read by the persons who are viewing. Now, the transmitter will improve the signal that is sent to the communication channel. The channel chosen for the message to move from point A to point B. Then we will have the receiver. The receiver will accept the message before it is passed on to the output transducer. The output transducer will now return the message to its original form so that the human element aspect can be judged based on the output. Now, in the communication system, we have what we call noise. Now, noise is an unwanted signal in the communication system. This will disrupt the signal that is sent via the communication channels. So it is better to try to eliminate noise from the communication before you actually start the process. Once it is inputted with the source, it is very difficult to separate. Now we are moving on to the factors to be considered in selection of communication media. Now, before you send your messages in business, you need to consider some factors to ensure that the message that you are sending will be received as quickly as you want it to be received. Now, the degree of urgency. How quickly is the information required? Do you want the information to be received now, or do you want the information to be received at a later date? This will determine which of the media that you choose. The genre. What is the format of the material that is being sent? So is the format audio, is it visual, or is it written? This will determine which method you choose because you will have to factor that in and the distance which the information should travel before it gets to the destination. Level of confidentiality, the sensitivity of the information. Who will have access to this information? Can anyone in the organization read the information? Or if we put the information on the web, is it something that is very sensitive that we don't want everybody to be aware of? This has to be taken into consideration as well. Location and time zone. What is the local time in the area for the receiver? So this also depends again on the message that you are sending. If you require a feedback now, you must take into consideration the time zone in the different areas, the different location where you are sending the information, because businesses are located in different areas. The cost. What will each of the options cost? So once again, when you are choosing your communication media, it depends on the cost of sending the message. Then you will decide if you are using one over the other. And the next one is efficiency. If you are going to be using a format that is not efficient for the message that you are sending, then it is better to choose another format if it gives lots of problem to convert into the format that you want it to be. So you may need to change that format as well. Now I hope that you have been following, because we are moving into the methods of electronic communication that we will be discussing as we continue the presentation. Now, communication, electronic communication has made it easier for businesses to interact with all their customers and all their investors around the globe. Everybody does not have to be in the same location for information to be transported. There are several methods of electronic communication. These include text messaging, telecommuting, teleconferencing, video conferencing, online meetings, facsimile, and electronic mail. Now, I know most of you students, you are already familiar with all of these that we have on the board. So I know that you will be following intently and that you will also be participating in the discussion as we continue. Telecommuting or e-commuting. Telecommuting is called remote work, telework, teleworking, working from home, mobile work, remote job, work from anywhere, and flexible workplace. This is the arrangement where employees do not have to travel to a central work or office building. They can remain at home or wherever is convenient for them and use their equipment so that they can be able to still access their work environment. Now, most individuals are at home, actually working from home now because of the pandemic, as was said before. So in looking at the examples of jobs that are normally telecommuting jobs, we have software engineer, financial assistant, teachers or tutors, underwriters, web designers, interpreters, writers, and administrative assistant. Now I want you to take a minute and look at the one that we have there, teacher. The teachers are at home because the students are at home. And so we have students who are using the electronic communication means in order to facilitate classes at this time. Now we know that there are challenges, but because of the coronavirus pandemic, most of us or all of us are now more able to maneuver these applications because we are using them now for classes and for work. Advantages and disadvantages of telecommuting. Now, the advantages are employees are happier. So employees may be happier doing telecommuting because they do not have to travel to the office location. They are less stressed because they may not have to go and take the bus for commute. But on the flip side now, because of the pandemic and everybody is at home, they may be having challenges as well. So in telecommuting, we have higher productivity level. And again, because you're spending more time at work in your own environment where you are already comfortable, and if you have an office space or an area that is secluded and away from other interference, then yes, you will have higher productivity level. Your work hours will also improve because maybe you were working for 4 hours, 8 hours, and if you eliminate the travel time, then the managers may improve your work hours because you have more time to spend on the job. Now, the disadvantages of telecommuting: less personal contact with managers and co-workers. Some employees are more able to function better if they are around persons or people where they are able to have conversations which will not hinder them from doing their actual work. So if they are able to communicate with other persons face to face, some persons are more productive in an environment such as that. But because you are at home, you may not be able to get that connection from your other staff members. Difficult for managers to supervise. Now, your manager will not be at home or in the environment with you, so they will not be able to supervise the activities that you are doing. Hence, some persons may meet their deadline and some persons may not meet their deadline. Not because of any challenges that they have encountered, but because they were not motivated to work on their own without being supervised. More disruptions or distractions reduce productivity. Now, as was said before, if you are in an environment where you have a lot of noise or you have other distractions such as your children, if you don't have a secluded area where you can actually go for work, your productivity level may be reduced. More costly for employees or employers. The employees may be the one who have to provide all the equipment that may be needed for the job. So you may be the one who will have to use your personal computer, plus you will be at home, so your light bill will also improve. And the employer, sometimes they may be the one who will have to give you the devices depending on the software that you use to get your job done. So both persons can be affected at the same time. Now let's look at teleconferencing. Teleconferencing uses telecommunication technology to allow participants in 2 or more locations to speak with each other using telephones or computers. Now, most companies or all companies are using telephones as one of their devices to ensure that they keep in touch with customers, employees, and other personnel. So we already know how to use the telephone. And most persons are aware of how to use the feature of adding a conference call. Now, not only the telephone is able to make the conference call, but we can now use our computer to do teleconferencing. Advantages of teleconferencing: it saves time and money on travel, and it enables a large group to interact. So if you want to say something to a group of employees, a group of workers, instead of telephoning them or calling a meeting, you can just easily use the teleconferencing tool where you can impart the information to them at the same time. The disadvantage, difficulty understanding if participants speak with different accent. So if you are not familiar with the person who is making the presentation to you in a teleconference, you might have difficulty understanding if they are not speaking in the same language that you are accustomed to, right? Then we may have equipment failure. So your computer or your telephone might decide to give problems at the time when you are scheduled to have a meeting, and because you are not where the other participants are, you may not be able to participate in the meeting at that time. Also, you may have internet challenges. Sometimes the internet will go because of light, power outages, or the internet may just be slow at a particular time. So there are times when you encounter different and various challenges to stop you from having your teleconferencing as a whole. Now we are moving on to video conferencing. Video conferencing, as the name suggests, allow people to see each other as well as hear each other. Now, most individuals prefer the video conferencing as opposed to teleconferencing, especially in business. In business, the persons, the managers, the organizers would like to see your expression to understand if they are getting through to you, and to understand also how they can assist you in getting better product quality out there, and so on. So most persons prefer the video conferencing over teleconferencing. Advantages: increases efficiency and results in more profitable use of limited resources. So if you have limited resources at the office, you can have your video conferencing where persons can stay in their various locations, and they will be the one who will have to ensure that they have their equipment in order to participate in the conference. Can be used where face-to-face communication is necessary. Again, where you have or may need to have to see the person's expression, like such as an interview, you may need to use the video conferencing because you want to see the person who you are interviewing, and you want to be able to identify with their expression as you go throughout the interview. Reduce travel time, and most persons are now aware that the travel time cuts into what you would have had or what you would have been able to spend on the conference itself. So most persons prefer to have video conferencing instead of face-to-face conferencing. Documents can be shared. That means presentation documents, data or reports can be shared using your PowerPoint presentation, and also you can ensure that persons are able to see and they are able to understand. So this is where your projector is very important, because you will use your projectors now. You can project the documents, and also you can email the documents to the relevant persons before you actually start the conference. Can meet with several groups in different locations at the same time. So here again, if we have business members in different countries or different areas of the island, we can meet with them via video conferencing to get their interpretation of things, to get their ideas to continue with business and to move forward. So we do not necessarily have a face-to-face conference anymore. We can use our online methods of video conferencing. The disadvantage now of video conferencing: lack of personal connection. Again, you may lose some persons because you are not face-to-face with them. You are not able to give them the personal touch. You're not able to see their expression. You're able to see them, but the expression may not be as how you would interpret if you are seeing them actually face-to-face. So again, the personal connection may be missing. Differences in time zones again. When you are organizing video conferencing, it may be a challenge because the time zones will determine that you have to choose a particular time that is convenient for all persons, particular business hours that is suitable for all persons. Unreliable technology, again, that plays a major role in whether you are able to conduct your conference or participate in the conference as you would want to, because there are times when you might be at the conference and your technology fails you or you keep having some sort of disruption with the connection. Training may be required. Not all employees are able to use the electronic devices as we may want to. So before you start to say everyone should be aware or everyone should know how, you need to ensure that you offer training to your employees so that all persons are able to engage or to participate in the conference as you would want to have them do. It may be expensive to have a video conference electronically because you may have to set up different screens, not only in the office, but you may have to set up different screens in other areas, which will allow persons to view the presentation. And these screens or these equipments that you may need to use can be very costly. So it may be expensive to set up a video conferencing after all. Now we are moving on to online meetings and virtual meetings. Now, online meetings and virtual meetings are similar to video conferencing that was just discussed and also similar to teleconferencing. Most of the features that you would use in video conferencing is also available for the virtual meeting where you would use the virtual platform in order to get your message across and to meet with the different persons. Again, for virtual meeting, you would want to have your internet connection, ensure that you have audio, and some persons will require that you have video so that you are able to participate as you would also need to in the virtual meeting or the online meeting. Since the coronavirus pandemic, these meeting applications have been widely used by most businesses and institutions because we are at home, persons are able to meet and to discuss different matters using one of these applications. So these are just some applications that we have been using. More traffic they have been seen on these platforms since we have been having the pandemic. And I know that most persons are familiar with the Zoom application and also the Google Hangout application. All right, so now we are moving on to fax. I know that some of our students may not be familiar with the fax machine because at one point in time, the fax machine was used as the multifunctional device that is used in business to ensure that large volume of data is transmitted to different organizations without using the postal service. Using the fax machine is cheaper than actually using the postal service, and it is also much quicker, right? So once you're going to be using the fax machine will ensure that the document is scanned. When the document is scanned, it will go to the next business place that you want it to go. But first, you have to input the telephone number for the company, and you have to ensure that you get the fax signal so that you will be able to send the message. All right? So we are moving on now to the internet. Most of you students already know what the internet is because almost every day you spend some time on the internet. Whether you are doing some research or you're playing a game or you're just talking to friends, you spend the time on the internet almost every day. So we are still going to go into it to hear what you have to say. All right? The internet is the world's largest system of intercommunicated computer network. It is a set of computers that are connected to each other to freely share resources. The internet is linked by various telecommunication media, including telephone lines, cables, and satellite. A wide range of communication services can be accessed on the network. And as was said before, students, you all know what electronic mail is. We are talking about email, sending an email to someone, sending an email to a friend, or sending an email to a relative. So you actually know what an email is. You also know what instant messages are, because most times you are sending a text, you are sending a WhatsApp message, which is in terms of text, and you can also use web-based texting. And the World Wide Web is how most of you have been communicating, because you have been socializing using the different social media platforms on a daily basis. So that is the internet in a nutshell. I hope that you have been listening. Okay, so now we are moving on to social media. And I know that this will be some of your favorite topic. When you look at the board now, you are seeing sharing, you are seeing blog, you see online, you see accounting, you see community. You are seeing so many different words here on the screen. Now we are talking about social media. We are talking about sharing information. Now, students, I know when you hear social media, you're talking about just socializing, but not anymore. We are using social media as well in businesses to ensure that customers are aware of the products that are available in some of the business organizations. So not only is social media used now for social activities, it is also used for business activities. Social media is an online platform which people use to build social network or social relationships with one another. They share similar personal experience, or they share career interest on social media. Now, some examples of social media are Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I am sure in your head right now, you are just saying a whole lot more of them because you are familiar with so many of them. How can social media benefit your business? Social media can benefit the business by doing market research, brand awareness, lead generation, relationship building, and customer service. Now, if you know of any more different ideas that we can use the social media platform or pages to do, let us know in our next discussion. So now we are looking at discussion board, or some persons may call it a message board or an online bulletin board. Members of the discussion forum are asked to post messages such as questions or comments. Now, when you're using the discussion board, it does not necessarily mean that you are communicating in real time. The discussion board can be used at any point in time that you feel you want to comment on a particular thread that you see happening there on the internet. So if you want to participate in a discussion, however, you need to ensure that you click on the thread and ensure that you type your comment. After you type your comment, you will press post, and your post can be seen by everyone on the internet who is viewing that discussion forum. All right? So let us look back at what we have been doing so far. We have been looking at electronic communication, and we say that electronic communication is transmitting information using the electronic media. Electronic media can be telecommunication, it can also be video conferencing, it can be fax, and it can also be email. Now, most of what we have been discussing today, we have been doing over the past months because, as we said before, we are in the pandemic and most persons have to be staying at home. Therefore, we need to ensure that we are aware of these electronic communication devices and platforms that we can use to ensure that we stay connected with the rest of the world. And so, students, we ask that you continue to look at electronic communication, and we ask that you look at the different terminologies that have been used today so that you will be able to continue participating in the next lesson. That's all the time that we have for today. You have been watching CSEC EDPM. Up next, CSEC Chemistry. Stay with us.
Here, interactive classes for all ages on the School Time channel on onespotmedia.com. With a combination of live Zoom classes and recorded class time, Schools Not Out lessons, and numerous educational content, we've created a comprehensive 24-hour channel dedicated exclusively to educating our nation's youth. Early childhood through to primary, secondary, and tertiary, it's one stop on one spot for education 24 hours. Brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information in association with Television